What if I were to tell you that there is a car out there that can fit anybody's needs? You need something to bring the kids around in? Check. You need something to go fast and have fun in? Check. You need something luxurious and comfortable but not super expensive to own and maintain? Check again. I am Mark Roden, and this is what makes the Infiniti G35/G37 so great. Before we even talk about the Infiniti G line, we first have to talk about the Nissan Skyline, actually. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, the Nissan Skyline in Japan was selling a ridiculous amount of vehicles to pretty much anybody who needed to get from point A to point B on time. And Nissan, being the smart company that they were, notice I said were because I haven't made a smart decision in years, saw an opportunity. So in 2003, they released the Nissan 350Z in America, and the Americans kind of loved it. It was our first Z car for 8 years since the 300ZX, and it lived up to expectations. But the Z is not a car that they can promote as being a good daily driver or an economy car, so sales for the Z were not really making them a ton of money. Then an idea sparked in their minds. Midway through the 90s, all Japanese car companies found a little bit of a loophole to the laws behind importing cars. What they did was they made separate companies that would sell their more economy-friendly sedans and market them as luxury in America to completely avoid importing them. Toyota would create Lexus with the Lexus LS400, Honda would create Acura with the Acura Legend, and Nissan would create Infiniti with the Infiniti G20. You may be asking what any of this has to do with the Nissan Skyline, but don't worry, here it comes. A couple years after the launch of Infiniti in the States, there wasn't really a strong lineup for them. So what they would do is take their next Nissan Skyline generation, rebadge it, and sell it as a luxury car to us Americans, introducing the Nissan Skyline V35, or commonly known as the Infiniti G35.
The Infiniti G35. 260 horsepower, sport-tuned suspension, Motor Trend 2003 Car of the Year.
The damn G35 actually did not launch as a car that was only good for partaking in takeovers, but it was launched as a car that would answer to the people looking for something that looks good, is comfortable to drive, and is still reliable to own. However, it didn't take long for us car guys to get our greasy little fingers all up on there, because we realized it came with the same motor that they were putting in the Nissan 350Z, the VQ35DE. Now yes, the VQ gets a lot of hate from people in the car community for sounding like a marching band on wheels, and they may be right. When I rev going through a tunnel in my 350Z, the whole cast from that one SpongeBob episode comes out and gives me a freaking standing ovation. But the engine is a high performing engine nonetheless. It was a 3.5 liter V6, hence the 35 in the name G35, and it was making 287 horsepower at launch. That being in a sedan that's still rear-wheel drive while the rest of the world was changing to front-wheel drive, and it was paired with a 6-speed manual transmission that was called the CD009 that still to this day is used in 1000 horsepower super builds everywhere. All of that meant that this car was a hit with the car community almost immediately.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Now, I would be lying if I told you that the car came flawless without any issues. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, over 80% of you guys forgot to click the subscribe button, so it makes sense that Infiniti would launch the G35 with a couple of slight issues, but most of them would be addressed right away and were protected under warranty. The brake wear was a little bit crazy, but you could bring them in under warranty and get them replaced. The bushings would fail, but once again, they were protected under warranty, and the clear coat would fade a little bit, but this was a problem in most early 2000s cars due to a recent law about painting the cars. Overall, everything that actually mattered about the car was bulletproof though. The engine, the transmission, and all electrical systems were reliable as hell. Think of it like Rainbow Six Siege. It has its flaws, like the map tower or how they took away Jaeger's ACOG, but overall the game is still a good game. And then midway through 2003, they would give us the Infiniti G35 Coupe, which was a completely different animal from the sedan. Well, not really. They still came with the same motor making the same power, and they were still paired with the same manual transmission or automatic transmission if you're into that kind of thing, but they looked a whole lot more sporty. One of the main differences between the sedan and the coupe was the differential. The sedan was open differential no matter what model that you got, but if you got anything but a base model coupe, you would get the wonderful limited slip differential that they were putting in the Nissan 350Z, meaning you could do some damn skids. In 2005, the G35 was given a pretty decent refresh, changing the looks and giving the car a new and improved engine that we all now know of as the Rev Up, pretty much meaning it had a higher redline and a little bit more horsepower. At this point, the G35 was really carrying Infiniti to the top of the food chain, selling over 65,000 models per year. So when the guy with the clapped out G35 coupe on Marketplace is trying to tell you that it's a gem and you're not going to find anything like this for $7K, tell him he's an idiot. The car was a perfect start to the new Infiniti that we were all hoping for. It was fast but reliable. It was cool looking but didn't stand out too much to make it flashy. And it was luxurious but still cheap to buy. And so sure enough, it was loved by everyone. For anyone looking to just buy a daily driver that isn't a boring old Camry, they could go with the all-wheel drive automatic transmission sedan model. And for the people who are looking for something to be a little bit more fun and cool but still be able to drive it without worrying about it breaking down on the side of the road, they could go with the rear-wheel drive G35 coupe with the manual transmission. And due to this newfound success with the G35, of course they would do it again.
I really should have followed the GPS.
I'll just ask this guy. Excuse me, sir! Do you know where casinos?
The Infiniti G sedan, because luxury should inspire confidence.
It's not from around here.
In 2007, they would come out with the next generation of the Infiniti G car, the G37. This would look very similar to the G35, but inside it was a completely new beast. It came with a 3.7 liter V6 now, hence the name G37, and it was making a very good 330 horsepower. This was a huge jump in performance from the previous model, and it still had everything else that made the G35 so great on it. The engine was now called the VQ37 VHR, which saying it was an improvement would be a massive understatement. Just like the last generation, this engine was borrowed from the current Z car of the time, the 370Z. Once again, at first it was only launched as a sedan, but would be launched shortly after as the coupe model. And I don't know about you guys, but the G37 coupe is something truly beautiful in my eyes. It has very sleek lines, but stands out from the average crowd of sedans and commuter cars. And inside, it was new and improved as well. It now had a small infotainment screen that sure is quite outdated in terms of today's standards, but back when it came out, it was pretty damn cool to see. It also had push to start, which in my opinion is kind of useless, but a lot of people make a big deal about that. But most importantly, what they did to the transmission is really cool. You were still offered with the 6-speed manual transmission, which is obviously the much cooler one, but now that the automatic was even given the option of paddle shifters, which, let me tell you, really makes you feel like a race car driver when banging through gears. Overall, the G37 sedan and coupe were both something to not only write home about, but to call home about on your brand new infotainment system. And finally, the car had a good engine to build up too. The VQ37 VHR can very easily make it to 600 horsepower without having to touch the internals. And even though it does still sound like a damn trumpet, turbocharging one of these things is something I think everybody should experience at least once. The only thing that was kind of questionable at first was the looks, but don't worry, in 2010, they would do two major things. One is give it a facelift, which really made it look more aggressive for the coupe models, and even it turned the sedans into something that looked like it came from Germany. And two, they would also release the wonderful Infiniti G37 Coupe IPL. IPL stands for Infiniti Performance Line, and it did not lie on the performance part. I personally think the IPL G37 is a performance model that does not get enough love at all. Like, everybody talks about the M Sport BMWs or the Type R Hondas, but nobody cares about the IPL G37, which is mind-blowing to me because the car was now making 350 horsepower, which is a massive jump. And on top of that, they completely retuned the suspension to make this luxury coupe take corners like a little freaking Miata. And they would even touch up on the steering system to give the car a much more refined steering feel. They also gave the car a completely new body kit so you can prove to your next door neighbor that this was a sports car now, and his little Mercedes E550 can get absolutely sauced in a straight line. Once again, this car proved to the world that Nissan can make something that goes against all odds. The car was still cheap compared to the competition. It was right on track in terms of performance. It had just as many nice new features in it, and most importantly, it was 10 times more reliable than the competition. And due to all of that, the people loved it. It sold right around 60,000 models per year once again, and on the first year it was released, it sold a whopping 85,000 models. That's getting close to commuter car levels of sales. Infiniti did what everybody thought couldn't be done with luxury sports cars, and maybe that's the reason as to why these cars get so much hate. But if you're one of those people that blindly hate on VQs just because they are a popular choice among car guys, I urge you to look into them a little bit more with an open mind because, yeah, they aren't the fastest car in their class. They're also not the most luxurious in their class. And sure, the majority of the owners like to take them to an intersection and they think they're Adam LZ, then crash it into some parked Chevy Equinox. But the car itself is extremely cool, and those people are picking them up because they can take the beating while still being cheap as hell. And I think if more people started to understand what the Infiniti G cars were going for, you'd really start to understand what makes the Infiniti G35 or G37 so great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's video on what makes the G37/G35 so gosh darn great. I absolutely, obviously love VQs. I have a 350Z and I love it. I think that they get a lot of hate, and I think a lot of the hate is warranted. VQ guys do some very dumb things, but at the end of the day, they're very good motors, and the cars are very good that they put them in as well. And I think that more people should be opened to the G line and the Z line of cars and understand like why people like them so much, because yeah, on paper it doesn't really, you know, sound that great. They don't have like the best tunability out of all the cars out there. They don't sound the best, obviously, but they're reliable, cheap, fun rear wheel drive sports cars with decent horsepower out of the gate. And I just wanted to make a video talking about why I think the G37 and G35 are so great. Either way though, let me know what other video you guys would like to see down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next what makes it great is probably going to be on the Mark 6 GTI, just because I want to, and I think you guys would like that. A lot of you guys I think like the Mark 6 GTI, so we're going to do it on that one. I was going to do the whole GTI line, but then I was like, there's so much to GTI that makes them like special that I feel like I have to do a whole like video on just a certain generation. But either way guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. Das Vidania. Have a nice night.